Thank you again so much for joining us for today's conversation, and welcome to Embracing and Embedding a Trust-Based Culture. This is part 2 of the TBP in 4D webinar series, which is being co-hosted by the Trust-Based Philanthropy Project, Environmental Grantmakers Association, Blue Sky Funders Forum, and Sustainable Agriculture and Food Systems Funders. It is so great to be here with you. I am Malvika Sahai, Director for Justice and Equity at Environmental Grantmakers Association, or EGA. I use she, her pronouns, and I am joining from Lenape Territory today in West Harlem, New York City. As a measure of accessibility, our speakers today will be sharing a verbal description of themselves. So I am a 28-year-old Desi American or South Asian American woman. I have straight Black hair today, and I am wearing a cream-colored sweater. And I really encourage you all, as you're joining in, to say a hello to us in the chat. Feel free to include your name, a land acknowledgement of where you are joining from today, with acknowledgement of the Indigenous lands upon which we meet. And then just as an accessibility measure as well, I wanted to highlight that today you can access a live CART transcription for the conversation by clicking the closed captioning button, which is on the bottom of your screen, and selecting Show Subtitles. You can also click View Full Transcript to view the transcript in the side panel of the meeting. And we wanted to express a thank you to Karen Schmieder, who is providing today's CART services. So just before I turn it over to our hosts to continue the conversation, we also wanted to invite you all to join us in grounding in a breathing exercise to center ourselves, encourage ourselves to show up mindfully and with our full humanity as a part of today's context and conversation. So to do so, I will help guide us through 3 breaths together. We will take a breath in for 5 seconds, hold for 3 seconds, and then breathe out for 3 seconds. As we're doing this, we encourage you to close out of any email windows that you might have open, any other browser windows, maybe consider silencing your phone. And again, thank you for joining us in this grounding moment before we get started with this conversation on culture and how it shows up in our work. We recognize the magnitude of this conversation. And so with this, I will take us to our breathing exercise. So we will go in for 5, breathe in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold for 3, 1, 2, 3, and breathe out for 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Breath 2, in for 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold for 3, 1, 2, 3, and out for 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And a closing breath together, in for 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hold for 3. 1, 2, 3, and then out for 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Thank you for joining us in that exercise. And now I will turn it over to Shadi Salehi, the Executive Director of the Trust-Based Philanthropy Project, to kick us off in our conversation today.
Thank you so much, Malvika. That was such a lovely opener for us. I know many of us are arriving today with our usual work schedules and anxiety and anticipation and stress about everything happening in our country and around the world. So it's really nice to take a moment to take a breath together. As Malvika said, I am the Executive Director of the Trust-Based Philanthropy Project. I am an almost 40-year-old Iranian woman with shoulder-length brown hair. I'm wearing a black shirt and 2 gold necklaces. And I'm in the corner of my office with a framed picture in the background and a lamp and some candles behind me. I am joining you from the land of the Ohlone people, also known as the San Francisco Bay Area. Thank you for joining us for embracing and embedding a trust-based culture. This is session 2 of a 4-part series examining the 4 dimensions of trust-based philanthropy. I want to take another moment to acknowledge our lead partners, Blue Sky Funders Forum, Environmental Grantmakers Association, and Sustainable Food and Agricultural Systems Funders. We also have a range of folks from around the country from regional associations that I want to acknowledge. We've got representation from Rhode Island, Southern California, Northern California, Western Pennsylvania, New Mexico, Oregon and Southwest Washington, and New Jersey, among many others from around the country. So thanks for being with us. So if this is your first time joining us for one of these series, welcome. We're going to really be digging into what we mean by a trust-based culture. So I'm going to ground us in some initial context setting on what trust-based philanthropy is, and then we're going to move into a panel discussion with 4 funder leaders that are embracing and embedding a lot of these practices that we're going to be talking about. We're going to spend some time defining what culture is, and then we're going to share a lot of practical examples of what it looks like to embrace and embed a trust-based culture and why it is something that we should be considering if we truly want to commit to doing this work in a trust-based way in our grant-making practice. So for the first 60 minutes of today, we will be in a conversation with leaders who have actively been trying out different approaches to prioritize a trust-based culture. For the final 30 minutes of the portion of this session, we'll go into breakout groups. So some of you may be joining with as a member of a regional association or one of our partner organizations. Many of you will be automatically assigned into breakouts if you are here with a member organization. If you are not part of a member organization, no worries. We are going to have a main discussion in the main room. So you can stick around for that if you'd like to participate in a conversation with peers. So I'll just jump right into it. So why trust-based philanthropy? We hear a lot about this approach lately, and many of us know that it's an approach to giving that addresses the inherent power imbalances between funders, nonprofits, and the communities that we serve. But it's important to ground us in why. Why is a trust-based philanthropy a movement that has gained momentum, and why is it there are so many of us here today with curiosity about how to do the work? So fundamentally, a lot of traditional philanthropy has reinforced a values to practice disconnect. So with the work, the values that drive a lot of our work in philanthropy come with very positive values, positive intentions. For example, reducing barriers, advancing opportunity, building a healthy and thriving community. However, in traditional philanthropy, a lot of our practices don't actually reflect and mirror those core values. And this image just depicts, a lot of foundations tend to be pretty opaque for grassroots organizations to access. We're literally building up walls to a lot of transactional barriers that get in the way of building genuine relationship. So what trust-based philanthropy is all about is to actually address that disconnect that exists in a lot of the traditional work. And many of us are already actively working to chip away and break down those transactional barriers. So we're all on this journey together. So trust-based philanthropy the definition is really about addressing that inherent power imbalance. And really at the core of this work, it's about redistributing power. And that's why we're here to talk about culture, because if we are committed to redistributing power in our grant-making work, then it is essential that we look at how we can embrace that in the way we lead and build our cultures within our organizations. So even though today we won't be talking about the practices of trust-based, it's good to remember that the practical external expressions of this work in grant making shows up as multi-year unrestricted funding, streamlined applications and reports, and a commitment to building relationships based on transparency, dialogue, and mutual learning. And that relational aspect of the work is also what we want to talk about, how we mirror that within our organizational cultures. So while there isn't a one-size-fits-all approach to trust-based philanthropy, there are a core set of values that drive the work of many funders that are committed to the trust-based journey. So these values reflect a lot of the core values that drive the work of the funders you'll hear from today, and also is represented in a lot of you all who are listening in today. So while you may not use these values verbatim, these are kind of some of the fundamental sensibilities and ethos that drive this work. So we're talking about working for systemic equity. That means that we recognize that we operate within an inequitable sector. We operate within a white dominant society. And if we truly want to advance equity and justice in our work, then we have to intentionally embed that value in everything we do and how we show up. That also includes redistributing power, recognizing that when decision-making and control is held in the hands of a few, it makes it almost impossible to address the scale of the issues that we're dealing with. And as we all know, with the pandemic, that really came to light for many of us, that we must redistribute power in order to meet the urgency of the moment. And that translates to just everyday life as well. That also requires us to center relationships, recognizing that relationships are currency. If we want to get anything done in the world, we really lean on quality, healthy relationships. So what does that look like to center those relationships within our work cultures? It's about partnering in a spirit of service. So shifting away from the traditional compliance culture of traditional philanthropy and approaching that relationship between funders and grantees as true partnerships, where as funders, we see ourselves as stewards and partners as in service of and service to the leaders on the ground and leaders in the communities. And that includes a sense of accountability, recognizing that our work is ultimately accountable to the people who are leading the work and the people in the communities we intend to serve. And thinking intentionally about checking ourselves each step of the way when we reinforce these old paradigms of being accountable to the funds and the endowment and the board. So how can we think more expansively about our accountability in the context of the work that we're doing and the values that fundamentally drive our work? This is also about embracing learning. So a trust-based approach recognizes that no one person has all the answers. We must be open to learning and evolving and growing in the work and embedding that kind of learning stance and learning culture in everything we do. So this work exists across 4 dimensions of philanthropy. Many have heard a lot about the trust-based practices. So that's like the bottom left corner, what you do and how you show up as a grant maker. And in this petal graphic on the screen, you see there are 4 petals. Each petal is an expression of the different dimensions of our work. And the values are a circle in the middle, reinforcing that values should drive all 4 aspects of our work. So upper left corner is culture. There's a reason why we kind of put that at the top, because culture is your organization's general way of being. It's kind of like it's the ethos of your organization that scaffolds so much of the way we're able to show up in practice. Structures are another core dimension of a trust-based approach. Those are the actual, like the bones and the calcifications of how we do this work. So it's hierarchies, systems, protocols, policies, technologies. And we'll be talking about that in our 3rd session. And finally, leadership is a key dimension of trust-based philanthropy. Leadership plays a key role in upholding organizational values, embodying and embracing, how this shows up in org cultures, and setting the tone for our organizations and how we show up and how we do the work. So this is, we're really thinking expansively beyond just grant making. Trust-based philanthropy is way more than giving multi-year unrestricted funding. It's about using these values to drive so much of our work. And then a big part of our work becomes checking ourselves against those values along the way. And that is a key part of the job, which we'll hear from our speakers today. So, what is culture? Culture is this huge thing, right? It's kind of this thing that's hard to wrap our arms around. It can often kind of be set as the default. We don't always think about it, but it's always there. And so there are many definitions of culture out there, but in the context of today's conversation, we're going to be talking about this as the expression of your values in your organization's norms, systems, and practices. It's your organization's general way of being. So it's how you're showing up, how you're interacting with one another. And because it's everywhere and it's always present, it is a key part of our work that we must nurture and pay attention to. And it can be challenging when we're grinding and we're focused on deadlines and objectives and grant deadlines and open calls and all these other things. But if we're not paying attention to our culture, then all of that other work, it can, that lack of attention can seep into other aspects of our work. So that's why we're here today, to talk about culture. So that's enough from me. I would love to welcome up our fabulous group of panelists. We have Pia Infante, the co-executive director of the Whitman Institute, a Spend-Out Foundation based in the San Francisco Bay Area. Welcome, Pia. We also have Dimple Abichandani, executive director of the General Service Foundation, family foundation based in Berkeley, California. We've got Kim Moore Bailey, CEO of Justice Outside, an intermediary grant maker that is committed to advancing equity and justice in the outdoor environment. Thank you, Kim, welcome. And we've got Shruti Jayaraman, Chief Programs Officer at Chicago Beyond, a social justice foundation based in Chicago. Welcome to our fabulous panelists. And I just wanna kind of get us started right off the bat. You know, I set kind of this general overview of what culture is. But Pia, I would love to start with you, just kind of as one of the, you know, lead architects that helped us think about the role of culture in trust-based philanthropy. Can you set some context for us? Why is culture a key focus of committing to trust-based philanthropy in practice?
Thank you, Shadi. Hi, everyone. I'm so honored to be in your company, the hosts and my co-presenters. This is Pia Infante. I am speaking to you from a friend's very modern kitchen, high above Ohlone territory in Oakland, California. I'm looking at the bay out of a big picture window. I am a Filipina in her mid 40s. I'm not young enough to say specific age. I have curly hair today. I'm wearing mauve, I think, and matching lipstick. And yeah, this is it. This is the conversation. I have to acknowledge that I think one of the things about professionalized white dominant culture is that we operate in business as usual all the time, even like regardless of how incredibly pressing and traumatic like the context in which we work and live and our families live and the planet is in right now, whether we're talking about war in multiple places, including Ukraine, and or climate, or, you know, just homelessness, you know, I mean, I don't know, I just was as thinking about coming into this conversation about culture and realizing how much the tools that we use to have these conversations are still, you know, these professionalized tools of white, you know, white academic, white corporate culture in a lot of ways, the technology, the setup, the agendas, not to problematize the incredible work that always happens to set us up to have the conversation, but just acknowledging that I really loved seeing and hearing where people are at, actually the physical place you're coming from and the peoples that you're naming. And I don't know how many of them are with us on this, you know, in this type of context. So there's always a lot to observe about culture, no matter what setting that we're in. And I think with the trust-based philanthropy movement and other racial equity, participatory democratic movements in our sector, you know, we can sometimes still be, in my experience, have that sort of false sense of separation from each other. So I just want to say, wherever your heart is, you know, wherever your joy and your grief are, I'm with you. I'm all of those things today. And there's a phrase that we like to toss around, you know, it's like culture eats strategy for breakfast. And the idea being, no matter what our priorities are, our goals, our strategies themselves, our structures, it's this ubiquitous, sometimes invisible set of forces that shape our thinking and our worldview and our frameworks, that express themselves in very simple things. For instance, email etiquette. Are you expected to respond to an email at 11 p.m. when it's shot out to you at 10:59 p.m.? What is the culture of communication? What is the culture that's evident in the structure? I'm blessed to be part of a co-directorship, which I think I hope is picking up steam, is this notion that singular executive leadership is incredibly overwhelming. And a lot of us are collaborative by nature, facilitative. Everyone on this that you'll hear from is a facilitative leader, starting with you, Shadi. So one of the ways I think about how to identify culture is, who does the organization read, watch, and listen to? What do we talk about, at the beginning of the call? Like, what are the influencers, whether they're, academics or, theorists or an Instagram account, who influences the shape and the tone of how we be with each other? What is considered sort of the holy grail of thinking that influences the worldview, that influences what success looks like? Is it a competitive culture where, I've heard different stories about organizations like, for instance, Meta, Facebook, where, there's a competition for literally the number of likes. That's part of the culture of what happens in that particular organization. So, I don't want to, I want to let other people speak, but I've just been thinking about how hard it is to identify, how culture shows up. And one last thought that I have, and I'll just share one story from the Whitman Institute, which is Spending Out, is that, many of the tools that we use, the financial due diligence tools that we use, are literally inherited directly from banking and finance, which means they are intrinsically racist because there's an incredible amount of bias in banking systems. Who gets home loans? Who gets small business loans? And we know redlining is very real, still happening now. Black and brown Indigenous folks do not get small or big loans from a financial industry that perpetuates a due diligence that is white supremacy. So if those are the tools that we're using, the technologies that we're using to do our good work, then we have to look at the ghosts in the structures that we are taking on. And I think that's what this conversation is about, is not trying to be some perfect thing, but to be able to, thoughtfully, in a principled way, interrogate our culture, our structures, our influencers, and ask ourselves tough questions. I remember asking my board to think about, how are we investing the portfolio? So 95% of our dollars are doing this, and 5%, or actually for us, it's more like 10 or 15%, but this percentage of our dollars are making social good, social movement grants. So what is the rest of our money doing? And often there's this bifurcation between, making sure that we systematically, like every single grant is very principled and ethical, and yet just handing the endowment over to wealth managers that work in finance and turning a blind eye to how we increase those, the endowments. So I think I'll stop there. I probably did not say what you wanted me to say, but I really can't wait to hear from the rest of you here, because I always learn from all of you when you share what your experience and wisdom is.
Thank you so much, Pia. I think a lot of those examples offers really good grounding to really flesh out what we're talking about here. Dimple Abichandani, Executive Director of the General Service Foundation, you too have written and spoken and thought a lot about the connection between culture and practice and why it's something that we must really nurture and take care of. Can you speak more to that from your perspective on how those two really connect?
Absolutely. First, just thank you. I'm so thrilled to be here with all of you and to be having this really important conversation. I'm Dimple Abichandani. I'm coming to you from Ohlone territory, Berkeley, California. I'm a South Asian woman in a mostly glass office over here. I'm wearing a black top and have dark brown hair. And I will claim my age, which is I'm a 48-year-old. And I really appreciate this conversation because those of you who know me know I'm kind of a nerd on culture stuff. And I think it has to do with just some of the things I've learned in my own leadership about how critical culture is. So I love the definitions that you all offered, and Pia, especially I appreciate the way in which you just reminded us of how ever present culture is. And so I'll just add a few more things to that, which is I often experience culture as the unspoken but deeply felt stuff. I think probably every one of us has had an experience of being in an organization that describes itself one way and then having that moment where you feel the gap, right? Oh, we're really laid back in this organization, and then something happens and you realize, oh, and that's culture, right? When there's the way that people sort of the unspoken but kind of default habits that are in the air of a collective group. Culture is always about power. And I look in organizations for the unspoken ways that people hold power, exert power. Who is always left cleaning up after a meeting, right? Who has the space in an organization to change when a meeting happens, right? Those things are never spoken. We never say who that is, but it's cultural. It's sort of in the air. And then kind of the last reflection is that if our policies and practices are kind of the how of our work, culture is often the why. And that's why it's actually really important that we explore it. Because the reality is that we get in our own way when we don't articulate the why. So building on what Pia said about how in foundations we often are drawing upon banking culture, right? And that's absolutely true. If you look at the fact that we call program leads program officers, right? If you think about where does that language come from? I mean, it's evocative of a criminal justice context, right? Which I think is really interesting to kind of to sort of break down. But actually where the origins of that, I think are really in loan officers, right? That when you go to a bank and you're trying to borrow money from a bank, there's usually someone there who's a loan officer who is charged with making sure that the bank can get its money back. And what does that loan officer do? They do due diligence, right? And so then you take all of those kind of practices and expectations and norms and really the why of that way of operating, and you move it into a culture or into a context that it's not really a fit for, which is philanthropic culture, where I hope you're not expecting to get your grant back, right? That's not a successful grant. But we still do those norms. We still do those norms of due diligence, and we still imbue that. We give that power to a staff member and say, you're an officer. So culture operates in these ways that when we don't explore the why and we don't name it, we often fail to meet our mission and our goal. So I'll just share a quick example of kind of where I learned that sort of early on at GSF. A few weeks into my job, I came in, we were a virtual team at that time. Um, and I had a team of 6 people who were kind of on a daily basis, like emailing me wanting to schedule meetings. And I noticed that their emails would say, hey, can we meet? And then they would have 6 times that they were available. And I had always worked at places where we had shared calendars. So I was really struck by the oddity of trying to like meet in that way. And so I looked, and it turned out that we didn't share calendars at my organization. And this was like the first thing I tried to change. I didn't even in my head think of it as like an organizational change, but I thought of it as like a quick technological shift that would make everyone's life, especially mine, easier. And that would allow us all to kind of also know like what is everyone working on, especially since we're not in the same office, right? And so I basically asked our operations person to just put on the setting that allows us to share calendars, and immediately got this pushback of, oh, our system doesn't do that. And it was Outlook, and I was like, nope, it definitely does. And so I started talking to the team about like, we're going to start sharing calendars. And I got tremendous pushback. And so I thought, wow, I think I'm not selling this right. And so I kept I kept telling these stories about how great it's going to be when we all can see each other's calendars. And there was this moment where I just stepped back and thought, what is happening here? And then I just saw really clearly that this wasn't actually about a technological change, but that there was like a culture that I had walked into, and that my technological change was actually being understood, rightly so, as a culture change. The culture I had walked into was one of enormous autonomy. And the idea of a shared calendar was a threat to that. And so what I learned, and this is, I'll pause here, but what I learned was that it's really important when you're making any change to actually understand that most changes, if you really want them to stick, they are culture changes. And so I actually very explicitly started to talk about the shared calendars as the beginning of building a culture of collaboration. And I started making the case for how our work would be more impactful if we were collaborating with one another. And so then we were able to talk about the concerns, right? Because people, like when you come at them with process changes and you don't actually acknowledge the underneath the surface culture changes, people will resist because you're actually talking at 2 different levels. So that was an early lesson for me, and one that as we start talking more about trust-based changes, I'm happy to share kind of how to talk explicitly about a trust-based culture.
Thank you so much, Dimple. That is such a vivid example of why kind of investing in culture and approaching it from a stance of the why that goes hand in hand with the what and the how is so vivid. Thank you. That's really, really great. I'd love to turn next to you, Kim Moore-Bailey, CEO of Justice Outside. You have had the opportunity of building your organization's culture from the beginning, from the start. And as an organization that's committed to equity and justice, you certainly had to kind of really hold true how those values show up in your org culture. So can you share more, Kim, about how you've done that and how you've thought about that in your work there at Justice Outside?
Yes, thank you. And thank you for having me here today. It's such an honor to be a part of this conversation. I am Kim Moore-Bailey. I'm the CEO and president at Justice Outside. I am calling in today from Lenape Territory in West Harlem, New York City. And I am a 54-year-old Black woman. I am wearing braids, glasses that are slightly too big, so too much pushing them up on my nose. And I am also wearing a purple top with some flowers on it. And again, just truly honored to be here. And you're absolutely right, Shadi. It's so interesting to be a part of these conversations now and think back 8 years ago when Justice Outside was a startup. There was 2 of us on staff and a mission before us to do something. And it was not, I was not aware of trust-based philanthropy. I wasn't trying to set up an organization to check off the boxes of some great list. It really was exactly what we've been talking about, thinking about authenticity, thinking about relationships, thinking about building community, all of these things sort of grounding us, and very much so this notion of collaboration. From as we were looking for offices, what color paint should we pick? What kind of carpeting should we have? To some of the larger conversations around our organization had been doing grant making in another version. And as it turned over to me, really, how do we want to move forward? And what does that look like? So it's been an extraordinary journey to continue to carry that forward, to think about our values, to allow our values to align with how we were operating. And as we grow and evolve, also revisiting those things, revisiting those values, checking in to make sure that our organizational culture, as you all are talking about, is it staying consistent to what the original vision was, to the original intent? One of the examples that I was thinking about around this idea of transparency and power sharing and collaboration was my background most recently before coming to Justice Outside was working in city government. And one of the things that I said as we were sort of, as a startup, there was really nothing. So putting together a HR handbook or something, we got to this sort of vacation page. And I was like, can we talk about this, right? I never celebrated Columbus Day, but yet because I worked for a city that honored it at the time, we randomly had that day off. It often fell on my birthday, so I wasn't upset about that, but I was like, what are we doing here? And so annually now with the team, we have a conversation and revisit the days that we are choosing to take off and celebrate. And whether or not it's a federal holiday or not, so we were celebrating Juneteenth before it became a federal holiday. And we do this annually because it is something that can change and evolve. I want to honor and recognize the members of the team and the staff and what their backgrounds are and what's important to them. And we've also put in place just breaks, just times when the office is closed. So it isn't a matter of just to say collectively, we're all going to just take the time to rejuvenate and not have to keep checking your email because you might be the only one that is off. And so just putting those types of things in place to really celebrate and honor a sense of collaboration has been really important to us. But, it also was a leading conversation that it wasn't enough for us to be a trust-based funder. We also wanted to be an organization that could be trusted by our partners, by our grantee partners, and that it's one thing to sort of espouse externally how you're going to do things. But if someone takes a look at your own organization and you're not following that, then your credibility is somewhat questioned. So we were very intentional about thinking internally about who we are, as well as externally, how are we presenting ourselves, and making sure that those values were aligned and that we were not walking our talk. I love that opening slide, Shadi, with the wall. And so that was really important to us, and we're constantly checking in on ourselves to make sure that that's the case. So yes, as a leader, I think it's so important to keep these things in mind and front and center. There's so many ways in which leaders can do this, but one particular component comes to mind is the trait of paternalism that has been talked about through white supremacy culture, and thinking about our grant making program. And Dimple, just to pick on your program officer statement, we hired for a program officer and probably 2 weeks in changed her title to director of programs, right? So we've never looked back on that. And when it came time to facilitate the grant making program, we actually invited all staff to participate and sort of not shifted the power. And regardless of your title, you had decision-making power, you had a vote. we were able to, advocate for organizations that we believed in and really made it a team-centered, focused conversation. And it was a practice that we started early on, and it's one that still continues. It's not a requirement. If you are like, I don't have the space to do this, that's great. But if you do and you want to, everyone can participate in that process. So it's a little bit of pushing against, this idea of grant making and this notion of who's ready to receive the funds, which we know comes from a good place. As a steward of funding, you want to make sure it's landing in the right place, but it has impact. As a leader of Justice Outside, as a startup, I felt that impact when I was told, I'm not sure if you're ready to receive funds yet from us. And so how do we mitigate that? And as we established our Liberated Past grant making program, we really leaned into how to set up opportunities so that we took away that impact. For example, our grant making will allow us to support organizations that don't have a 501c3 or operate as a program. And it's not for us to come in and help them get that, right? If this is how they're operating, we're able to support them through some of the funding that we receive. In a way that we would support organizations that do, and not having that 501c3 doesn't make you unready to receive funding to do the work. So I'll stop there with those few examples as to how this is showing up in Justice Outside.
Thank you so much, Kim. You're really underscoring kind of the interconnections of all of the things we're talking about. Culture is connected to structures. Our employee handbooks are a structural element of our work, and we'll be talking more about that. We'll be digging more into it in the next session, but it's inherently connected, and it's inherently connected to the way we do our practices. And so, as we've heard from all of our speakers so far, it really investing in that culture, checking it against values, checking actions against, are we showing up in the way that we say we want to show up, is kind of part of that ongoing learning and that journey in this work. And you're never going to be, like Kim said, it's not like a check the box and get it all done. It's a constant process. And so I want to come to you next, Shruti. You've thought a lot intentionally about this process. At Chicago Beyond, you're very committed to, having intentional conversations about white supremacy culture, taking an intentionally anti-racist stance in the way you do your work, but also how that shows up in your organization. And yet, you have still talked about how white dominant culture can still seep in, even in the best intentioned organization that is constantly checking against it and talking about it and reading about it. Can you talk about that process and how you at Chicago Beyond use tools to really work toward kind of not defaulting back to what has been the default for our whole society and world?
Thanks, Shadi. It is such a pleasure to be here with all of you. My name is Shruti Jayaraman. I have brown skin and dark hair, and I'm wearing a blue jacket. And there's a whole slew of books behind me and this plant that I'm realizing is getting like closer and closer. So by the end of this session, it might just be a plant. But for now, here I am. I am zooming in from the unceded homelands of the Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi nations. And Chicago Beyond, we are a family funder. We have been focused on equity since our founding, as Shadi mentioned, and a learning organization. Pia, I was so geeking out when you were talking because actually the Culture Eat Strategy for Lunch guy was my first boss out of college. And this has been a passion topic for a long time. And the history is fascinating, right? Because we've been talking about banking. A lot of the organizational structure comes from military hierarchy. And that power dynamic may be really good when we're trying to execute in a highly controlled environment in great certainty. But we in philanthropy are trying to do the work of change in highly uncertain environments, right? And so how can we do that if our cultures hoard information? If it takes 80 people to sign off on something to move forward, if we're unable to hold divergent views and generate from love, if only certain people in the power hierarchy or people who present in kind of dominant norms in a certain way get to have ideas that actually get heard, and everyone else is expending so much energy playing it safe. And so in this work, this culture conversation just feels essential, and it is such an opportunity to create from a place of love, to give and receive belonging. This is like really joyful work. So I don't want people to come into this being like, this all feels very like hard and ooh. Um, Pia, you talked about the kind of default that's always playing, right? You could kind of say, what if we just don't? The result is not no culture, right? There is something that's filling in the blanks. Um, and that's where I think that this work feels really important. So, I think I'll talk a little bit about, for us, it's been really about assessing where we are, about scaffolding this kind of reflection and learning as a really important tool, normalizing it, because again, there's a default operating, and if we're not speaking into that default, it's speaking. And then, the kind of learning culture that results in. So, on the assessing, again, it can start really simple, right? As leaders, if I really take a look at the last 10 ideas that had salience in this organization, 10 ideas that made change for us, where did they come from? Did all 10 of them, and I'm not saying don't listen to our trustees, but did all 10 of them come from our board? Did all 10 of them come from, people who present in a certain way within the organization? Um, and I think in staff roles too, let's look at the last month, in 3 situations where it was a situation of stress or a situation of difference, you know, how how did I relate laterally and build trust in that moment? And I really have to shout out our team at Chicago Beyond, because um, really they make an art form of this, and it is such a joy to kind of see the growth and the creativity around that. I'll talk a little bit about that, the second one, the scaffolding for reflection and dialogue, and then I think um, others are going to talk later about both the learning culture and the normalizing. But on that reflection and dialogue, it's really easy, I think, with this culture stuff to kind of say, is this necessary? Right? Like reflection and dialogue, do we really have time for that? There's so much urgency, there's so much real world happening. Um, and it makes a lot of sense to ask that, because I think the dominant culture, it really feels like what happens out there is separate from what's going on in here, right? Like go out there and be trust based, go out there and have these transformative relationships that change power dynamics. Um, and to be clear, by reflection dialogue, I don't mean just looping on the same set of concerns and not kind of doing anything. I also don't mean just kind of analyzing and learning and it never translating to action. That is real, but that is called being stuck. That is not what I mean by reflection and dialogue. It's really recognizing that there are these deep channels of power hierarchy. And if we just try to move money or move influence or seed power, it's just going to flow through those same channels, right? And we can look at public policy examples of what happened with the GI Bill, what happened with the PPP program. And we can look at really personal examples of in philanthropy working so hard to bring community members onto our boardrooms, into our councils, into our staff. And then so many colleagues have shared with me 6 months in, it doesn't actually feel like our decision making is so different. Right. And that's those deep channels that, we have to build the actual skills and muscles to build a different channel. And so at Chicago Beyond, what does that look like? One way that looks is, every month we have dedicated reflection and dialogue. We've done it with Temo Kun's materials. Kim, I think your team has as well. We actually have one on Sean Ginwright's new book next Tuesday, where we're talking about vulnerability and how that can be very nurturing, and it can also be very extractive. Um, I think, more to the point, some key learnings from this is, one, the importance of doing it regularly. This is not something where you like train on it and then it's done. Two, the importance of the whole doing it, right? So this is not just the programs, program officers or, we call them growth, since we're talking about titles here, creating some trust-based subculture to go do trust-based things out in community, right? This is the whole organization. And third, the vulnerability, and that relates to the doing it regularly, because that develops over time. But the fact that this is not cerebral, like studying something and now I know the 3 points. It's really embodied, an embodied experience of learning something and being embodied with one another, and actually taking different perspectives and trying to understand from one another's. And I think that kind of deep work it can be painful, it can be incredibly joyful, and it creates this kind of collaboration, this ability in the moments when it's hard to actually look at it and work it and name it and talk about it. Um, and then all these things interconnect, I think is my last point, which is that, you set a norm where a growth person, sees it as her role, not to dig in heels about how much more community, down with community I am than somebody else in finance, but rather to say, I'm here to laterally build trust with operations and communications and finance, and to bring them into, the joy of kind of feeling our partners, our grantees. And then because she's doing that, it creates spaces where, folks in other roles are making the calls, the out of the blue kind of grant calls saying, hey, Chicago Beyond appreciates your work and we're able to fund. And then, because of that, you see someone, who's maybe in a finance role saying, hey, I've now been following the social media of this organization. I went to their thing on Monday. And, actually we had this issue with our bank and we didn't communicate to our partners in under 24 hours. And now I want to call a huddle, of all of us to come together to figure out how do we do differently next time. So it's a really deep work. It's really joyful work. And I'm glad we're having this conversation.
Thank you so much, Shruti. And this really reinforces some of the points that Pia raised at the beginning. What are you reading as a team? Some of these things really do influence the org culture, and we will absolutely share the links to all the references that have been mentioned today. We'll include that in our follow-up email. So please keep an eye out for that. So we only have about 7 minutes left. So I'd like to invite the four of you to give a very brief example, and I'm going to kind of bring you in on very specific things that we've already talked about. Dimple, I would love for you, because you're in the midst of onboarding a new staff member this week, and GSF is a 75-plus-year-old foundation. How have you worked intentionally in your onboarding processes to invite new staff into the culture that you want to set and that you have set?
So I think, first and foremost, we're in the middle of like a 4-day onboarding retreat for our new deputy director. And when I planned the retreat, the first thing we started with was culture, and both kind of explicit conversations about what is our culture, but then I had an awareness of what we do this first week is actually what she's going to take away as being real information about our culture, right? So we had explicit conversations. We did storytelling about like where are the places that all of us felt our culture, understood our culture. We asked her like what's important to her in a culture. And then the second day of the retreat was hosted at my house, and it included, a picnic outside and a walk on the beach. And that was in place of me saying to her, in our culture, we think it's important that you have balance. We think it's important that you get sunshine. We think it's important that you move your body, right? So I could have said those things, but actually we lived into it. I didn't say those things. We just made sure that day 2 of the retreat included time for that. So I think that's actually the balance, right? That you have to do like this show and tell, and that we all have to always be making sure that we're, you're building it by building it, that you're living into it.
Thank you. That's such a great example. It's about the show and the tell. Pia, I want to come next to you. Your foundation is Spending Out. And how have you and your co-ED worked with your board in a kind of trust-based culture as you're making these big moves to close your doors? What can you share some examples of what that has looked like in a cultural context?
Yeah, I'll say that we have incredibly dreamy board chairs, current and past. But I think what is sometimes the sort of mistaken impression that a good board chair is one that leaves you alone, right? And I think that for us, it's been about true collaboration. So our current board chair has actually a strong background in finance, and And actually, that has been incredibly helpful to set guide rails and sort of structure for the legal and fiscal, many steps in dissolving a foundation. So with real trust that our board chair and this committee of our board is really holding that. Because I think boards can sometimes either be like, they just drop in a few times a year and make some commentary, or maybe sometimes it feels like they're trying to manage, right? I think we have a board that trusts us, and then we trust them to hold these, important roles around making sure that we are actually fiscally and legally compliant with dissolving a foundation. So with our current board chair having real strength in that background and a committee, behind him, with him to do that, it has given my co-executive director and I an incredible amount of space for creativity, being in real relationship with many of our orgs are in transition, having leadership crises, just dealing with everything that we feel like we're dealing with, and fundraising, and, on top of that. So I guess what I'll say is that the way it shows up culturally is we're meeting together in true collaborative spirit without a lot of performance and with a lot of truth telling about our strengths and limitations. Because my last thought here is that if the relationship between a staff and a board is very performative, meaning a staff is constantly feeling like they have to perform for the board to validate, the grant making budget, my guess would be that the communities and grantee partners of that organization also feel like they have to be pretty performative. And that is to that point where trust-based philanthropy isn't just about our external grant making activities. It's really also about how we operate with each other in deep intention. And when we're not synergizing and aligning and collaborating well, having, space for actual disagreement and tension to come to good decisions together, good principled decisions that are about the mission and not any person's preference, if that makes sense. So again, dreamy board chairs and folks that are willing to hold us as human beings as well as leaders of an organization.
Thank you so much for that, Pia. Kim, I want to come next to you because around this learning culture piece, you have really kind of made a clear point that culture is not a one and done. And this learning process is something that's constant. Can you share kind of what that looks like and maybe one brief example about how you've really embodied that at Justice Outside?
Yes, and I think it's been mentioned as well, is that I remember at one point I didn't want to go to my own staff meeting, and I was like, well, what's going on here? And it was really because it was a series of report outs, much of which I had already heard. So we made a very conscious decision to shift our staff meetings to be generative in conversation, which has allowed us to bring in articles and a book club model and videos. And anyone can contribute, anyone can can bring up a topic that allows us to do the deeper learning as a collective team, to share ideas, to check in with one another. If what we are reading and recognizing and holding up is, when we found the trust-based philanthropy articles, for example, right? It was, wow, we are doing some of this, and perhaps there are other things that we could do better. So I think that is probably the most concrete example that I can share that is also communicative. And of course, we started it pre-COVID, and it has translated as well as we've all shifted to also being virtual. So that has also just been incredibly important and incredibly grounding. And I would say, across the arc of the staff, a real learning opportunity for everybody.
Thank you, Kim. We are over time and we need to move to breakouts. Shruti, I do want to invite you and give you a chance to just offer one piece of advice or guidance or underscore one thought that you would like to lift up before we move on to our breakouts.
Maybe I'll offer encouragement instead of advice, which is, in starting, it can sometimes feel a little bit scary or a little bit like, ooh, I don't really want to look that straight in the eye. um, but once you get started somewhere in offering, like you never know what permission you're giving somebody else. And so many times I've seen this again and again, where someone in the room has the courage to say, hey, wait a second, like we got to a no on this, and everyone after the fact was like, oh, I knew that. Like, why was it that there was all this knowledge in the room and we weren't having the conversation? You know, could we talk about that? Can we talk about that curiously? Not as like we're bad and this, let's judge this, but just can we curiously all look at that? And then it invites this whole thing of other people, you know, coming in, and then it feels more normal. And then that invites a whole set of other conversations that, like, hey, if we could talk about that and it was safe, maybe we could talk about this and it'll be safe.
Mm.
Just really encouraging people to not feel like you have to, like, I mean, yes, there's like the assessing and the learning, and there's all these pieces to it, but you don't have to start everywhere.
Yeah.
And it can really just unfold because it's a chance for people to be humans with one another. It's a chance for us to, like, we have amazing colleagues. We have amazing grantee partners. We have amazing board trustees. And it's a chance to be human with one another and speak truth to one another. So
That is so beautiful. Thank you, Shruti. And thank you to our panelists for sticking with us a little long. I hope you all took away, I see some amazing comments in the chat. This has been such a fruitful discussion. Clearly, we need more time to talk about this stuff, but I really appreciate all the tangible examples that you've offered. And now, in the spirit of curiosity, we are going to shift into peer discussion groups where we can actually process and unpack some of this together.